Hey everyone, welcome back to Rewilding the Future. Today we're diving into one of the boldest rewilding ideas yet, bringing brown bears back to Africa. That's right, Africa wasn't always a land without bears. For thousands of years, the mighty Atlas bear roamed the mountains and forests of North Africa before disappearing in the 19th century. But what if we could restore that lost balance? What if brown bears could once again walk the wild landscapes of the Atlas Mountains, shaping ecosystems, sharing space with wild African dogs, hyenas, and even lions? In this video, we'll explore the fascinating history of bears in Africa, the ecological reasons for their extinction, and why rewilding brown bears could be a game changer for African wildlife and the future of conservation. So let's head into the heart of Africa's forgotten wilderness and discover if the bear's return is really possible. Millions of years ago, Africa was home to several species of bears, roaming alongside other great mammals of the Pleistocene. The evolutionary story of bears on the continent begins with their ancestors, the ursids, who likely originated in Eurasia and spread into northern and northeastern Africa during periods of favorable climate and ecological conditions. Fossil evidence shows that the most notable species to have lived in Africa was the Atlas bear, a subspecies of the brown bear, and the only bear known to have lived in historical times on the continent. The Atlas bear once thrived in the Atlas Mountains of North Africa, particularly in what is now modern-day Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia. These bears were adapted to rugged, forested mountain environments and fed on a mixed diet of roots, acorns, nuts, fruit, and small animals. Though generally not as large as their European or North American cousins, Atlas bears were strong and resilient, well-suited to the cooler, temperate environments of North Africa's highlands. Earlier still, during the Miocene and Pliocene epochs, approximately 23 to 2.5 million years ago, Africa may have seen other ursid species such as Agriotherium, a now extinct genus of large bear-like carnivores that ranged widely across Eurasia and Africa. These ancient bears were part of a more complex carnivore community that included saber-toothed cats, hyenas, and large canids. However, bears never spread far into sub-Saharan Africa. The hot, open savannas and dense tropical rainforests posed challenges to their survival. Unlike the forests and mountains of Eurasia, these southern environments lacked the temperate conditions and ecological niches bears preferred. Additionally, competition with large predators such as lions, leopards, and hyenas, as well as an abundance of dangerous parasites and diseases, may have limited their southern range. The extinction of bears in Africa was a gradual process influenced by a combination of climate change, habitat loss, and increasing pressure from human activity. The final decline of the Atlas bear likely occurred in the 19th century. As the human population grew in the Maghreb, forests were cleared for agriculture and timber, and bears were hunted for sport, meat, and out of fear. The Roman Empire, and later the Islamic caliphates and European colonists, all contributed to the bear's decline, both through direct hunting and environmental degradation. By the late 1800s, the Atlas bear was extinct in the wild, making Africa the only continent, apart from Australia and Antarctica, without a native bear population today. Its disappearance marked the end of a long and fascinating chapter in Africa's natural history, a reminder of how changing climates and expanding human influence can reshape the face of entire ecosystems. Though bears no longer roam the African continent, their story remains etched in fossils, ancient texts, and collective memory, echoes of a time when these majestic creatures stood among the kings of the African wilderness. The idea of rewilding brown bears in Africa may seem bold, even radical. But as the planet faces ecological collapse, reviving lost ecosystems through reintroduction of key species is gaining support among conservationists. Africa once had its own native bear, the Atlas bear, Ursus arctos crowtheri, a North African subspecies of the brown bear, which roamed the forests and mountains of the Maghreb for thousands of years. Its extinction in the 19th century left a silent void in the natural heritage of the continent. Now, as climate and ecological restoration become more urgent, some are asking, should brown bears return to Africa? The most suitable candidate for rewilding Africa would likely be the Eurasian brown bear, Ursus arctos, the closest living relative of the extinct Atlas bear. Genetically and ecologically similar, the Eurasian brown bear has proven adaptable across a wide range of environments, from the cold forests of Siberia to the rugged mountains of Spain and the Middle East. In fact, populations still survive in nearby countries like Turkey and the Caucasus, relatively close to Africa. The Eurasian subspecies is resilient, omnivorous, and capable of adjusting to both mountainous and forested landscapes, making it the most promising option for a reintroduction effort in North Africa's rewilding zones. Reintroducing brown bears to Africa, specifically to the Atlas Mountains and forested areas of Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia, would serve more than symbolic value. Brown bears are keystone species and ecosystem engineers. Their presence shapes ecosystems. They disperse seeds through their droppings, aerate the soil while digging, and control herbivore populations, preventing overgrazing. As apex omnivores, they bring a balance that cascades through the food web, benefiting birds, plants, and even insect communities. In areas where bears have been restored, forests have become healthier, rivers cleaner, and biodiversity richer. Africa needs brown bears back, not only to restore lost ecological functions, but to rekindle a deeper relationship with its ancient biodiversity. The disappearance of the Atlas bear was not just the extinction of a species, it was the erasure of a guardian of the wild. In a time when rewilding projects are gaining momentum, from wolves in Europe to cheetahs in India, Africa has a unique opportunity to be part of this global movement. Bears could even become a new symbol of conservation tourism and ecological pride in the Maghreb, attracting visitors and investment while reviving ancestral links to the land. Of course, rewilding bears in Africa would not be simple. It would require careful planning, long-term ecological monitoring, community engagement, and the re-establishment of suitable habitats with enough food, water, and safety from human conflict. Education campaigns and livestock protection programs would be vital to ensure local support. But if these challenges are met, the return of the bear could mark a historic turning point, not just in African conservation, but in global ecological healing. Rewilding brown bears is not about recreating the past, it's about reclaiming the future. It is a call to remember that Africa once echoed with the footsteps of mighty bears, and that with care, wisdom, and courage it might do so again. Where could brown bears be rewilded in Africa? Rewilding brown bears in Africa is not merely about placing a species back into the wild, it is about restoring an ecological legacy. The key to success lies in identifying landscapes that can support the complex needs of these large omnivores. Abundant food, water, shelter, low human conflict, and enough space to roam. The most promising region for brown bear rewilding in Africa is the Atlas Mountains and associated highland forests of North Africa, specifically in Morocco, northern Algeria, and northern Tunisia. These areas represent the historic home of the extinct Atlas bear, and they retain some of the environmental characteristics needed for a modern reintroduction. The Rif Mountains and Middle Atlas in Morocco are particularly suitable. These regions feature temperate forests of oak, cedar, and pine, with altitudes high enough to offer cool microclimates, even as global temperatures rise. These forests are rich in plant diversity and produce acorns, berries, and roots that brown bears rely on in other parts of the world. Additionally, these mountains still harbor wild boar, small mammals, and scavenging opportunities, sources of protein for opportunistic bears. Importantly, these areas are less densely populated than the coast and agricultural plains, offering a buffer zone where bears could thrive with minimal direct conflict with human settlements. In Algeria, parts of the Kabylie Mountains, Oros Mountains, and Tel Atlas could also provide viable rewilding zones. These mountain regions still maintain fragmented forests and protected national parks such as Taza National Park and Creya National Park. While deforestation and agricultural expansion have reduced habitat in the past, reforestation efforts and conservation corridors could make these areas suitable again with investment and vision. These regions also benefit from having experienced conservationists and wildlife managers who could lead rewilding initiatives. In Tunisia, the Krumiri Mountains and Krumiri Forest near the Algerian border offer additional potential. These areas are heavily forested, rich in biodiversity, and receive relatively high rainfall, making them ecologically distinct from the arid lowlands. Though smaller and more fragmented than Moroccan habitats, they could serve as satellite sites or long-term habitat corridors linking future bear populations. However, even the most suitable regions will need significant ecological restoration before they can fully support bear populations. Deforestation, habitat fragmentation, human encroachment, and livestock grazing have all diminished the quality of these once great forests. Rewilding brown bears would require long-term reforestation projects, wildlife corridors, anti-poaching enforcement, and community-based conservation models. Local populations must be part of the solution, with incentives such as ecotourism, education, and support for traditional herding communities to protect livestock through non-lethal methods. Ultimately, the success of rewilding brown bears in Africa hinges on choosing regions where the memory of the bear still lingers in the land, where mountains remain tall, forests whisper ancient songs, and the ecological framework still has a pulse. The Atlas Mountains and their surrounding ecosystems are not only geographically appropriate, they are spiritually and ecologically connected to Africa's last bears. With care, vision, and unity between science and local culture, these majestic landscapes may once again become home to the bear, reviving a powerful symbol of wildness and balance in the African continent. Could brown bears survive beyond North Africa? The idea of rewilding brown bears across Africa sparks imagination, of mighty bears once again roaming the wild frontiers of a continent that has seen their kind vanish for over a century. Yet, while the ecological restoration of bears in North Africa seems plausible due to historical presence and compatible habitats, extending this vision to the rest of Africa, especially sub-Saharan Africa, presents a far more complex and uncertain scenario. Brown bears are versatile animals, thriving in a variety of environments, from dense forests and alpine meadows to tundra and mountain valleys. However, they are fundamentally creatures of temperate and cold climates, highly adapted to environments with distinct seasons, forest cover, and rich vegetation or prey availability. Their biology, thick fur, need for seasonal hibernation or torpor, and dietary habits makes them less suited to the harsh realities of the tropical savannas, rainforests, and arid deserts that dominate most of the African continent south of the Sahara. Unlike large African carnivores like lions or hyenas, brown bears are ill-adapted for the heat, disease load, and open landscapes of tropical ecosystems. For example, regions like the Sahel, the Congo Basin, East Africa's savannas, or Southern Africa's bushveld offer little in terms of suitable habitat for brown bears. The climate is too warm, the forest too dense or fragmented, and the competition from native predators too high. Additionally, the ecological role of large omnivores and top carnivores in these regions is already filled by a dynamic array of lions, leopards, hyenas, crocodiles, and wild dogs, species that have evolved in these landscapes for millennia. Introducing brown bears into these systems could create ecological conflicts, including competition for food and disruption of existing predator-prey relationships. Furthermore, from a disease perspective, brown bears might face serious challenges from tropical parasites and pathogens unfamiliar to their physiology. Bears in temperate regions contend with certain zoonotic diseases, but Africa's tropical regions present a much harsher parasitic landscape. Ticks, flies, diseases like trypanosomiasis, and other infections that could threaten a non-native species introduced without natural resistance. The only plausible exception might be high-altitude regions of East Africa, such as the Ethiopian highlands or Mount Kenya, where cooler climates prevail and where some temperate forests still survive. Yet even here, the absence of historical bear presence, the dense human populations, and sensitive endemic ecosystems would make such an introduction highly controversial and ecologically risky. In essence, North Africa stands as the only realistic candidate for bear rewilding in Africa due to its Mediterranean climate, forested mountain ranges, and the direct ancestral link to the extinct Atlas bear. The idea of spreading brown bears to other parts of Africa, though fascinating, clashes with ecological realities. Africa's ecosystems have been shaped over millions of years without the bear's influence, and forcing them into habitats for which they are neither adapted nor historically part of would likely do more harm than good. Rewilding must be driven by ecological integrity, not just ambition. While North Africa offers a chance to restore a lost ecological player, the rest of Africa stands as a landscape where different rewilding projects, focused on restoring native species like elephants, lions, cheetahs, and rhinos, are far more appropriate and urgently needed. Brown bears can and perhaps should reclaim their northern African homeland, but the heart of Africa belongs to its own ancient giants. If brown bears were rewilded in North Africa, especially in the Atlas Mountains and adjacent ecosystems, they would enter a dynamic web of interactions with a variety of native species, feral animals, and potential future rewilded megafauna. As opportunistic omnivores and ecosystem engineers, brown bears would influence both predator-prey relationships and ecological processes in profound ways. Let us explore how they might interact with key animal groups. Brown bears are omnivorous generalists whose diet and foraging behavior would overlap significantly with native ungulates of North Africa. In spring and summer, bears often turn to herbaceous vegetation, shoots, grasses, berries, and roots that they share seasonally with Barbary deer and various gazelles and antelopes, such as the Dorcas gazelle and the addax. While bears do not directly prey on healthy adult ungulates, their rooting and trampling can create patches of disturbed soil that encourage new flushes of vegetation, benefiting fawns and calves with nutrient-rich forage. Bears may also opportunistically scavenge newborn or weak individuals during late spring calving, providing natural carrion removal that reduces disease transmission within ungulate herds and aids nutrient cycling back into the soil. This subtle predator-scavenger dynamic enhances the overall health and resilience of ungulate populations over time. Wild boar and brown bears both engage in rooting behaviors that turn and aerate the topsoil in search of roots, tubers, and invertebrates. While boar creates small patchy disturbances, the larger brown bear can disturb far greater areas, accelerating soil turnover. This combined disturbance regime promotes habitat mosaics of early successional plants favored by many bird species and creates feeding opportunities for multiple mammal and amphibian species that exploit freshly overturned soil. Additionally, bears may predate on boar piglets, helping to regulate wild boar populations and prevent overrooting that can lead to erosion and habitat degradation. Barbary sheep inhabit rocky slopes and rangelands within the Atlas and Rift Mountains. Brown bear presence in adjacent forests can influence Barbary sheep behavior indirectly. Bears compete for acorns and seasonal fruits in woodlands, pushing sheep to graze on marginal plants in alpine meadows. This spatial partitioning reduces direct foraging competition and creates a balance of grazing pressure across elevational gradients. Bears' occasional predation on lambs can further help maintain the Barbary sheep population in line with the carrying capacity of the rugged habitat, fostering a healthier, age-structured herd. The Barbary macaque occupies cedar and oak forests in North Africa, habitats also favored by bears. While adult macaques are agile and largely avoid predation, bear incursions into troop home ranges can induce heightened vigilance, prompting macaques to shift their foraging to safer canopy patches. This predator-induced behavior can reduce overbrowsing of saplings and shrubs by macaques, benefiting forest regeneration. Occasional bear scavenging on fallen macaque infants, though rare, serves as a natural population control that keeps macaque densities balanced with habitat resources. In regions where feral camels, donkeys, horses, and water buffalo roam, bears would likely play a minimal direct predatory role. Adult individuals of these large grazers are largely invulnerable. However, bears would compete with them for access to riparian plants and soft sedges in river floodplains during dry seasons. Bears' nocturnal or crepuscular feeding could reduce disturbance to diurnally grazed meadows, allowing domestic and feral herds better daytime foraging conditions. Furthermore, bears may scavenge on sick or dying individuals, aiding in carcass cleanup. In future rewilding zones, managing the densities of these large herbivores will be critical to avoid overcompetition with bears for key plant resources. As projects consider reintroducing African elephants, hippos, giraffes, wild cattle, and white rhinoceros, brown bears would join a community of mega herbivores that shape vegetation structure. Bears browsing on shrubs and young trees complements elephants' ability to knock down mature trees, creating a regenerative cycle where canopy gaps allow bear-favored understory plants to flourish. Giraffes feeding high in the canopy would hardly overlap with bears, reducing direct resource competition. However, in communal waterholes and salt licks, bears may displace smaller megafauna or feed on salt deposits, shifting visitation patterns and potentially benefiting less dominant species. The presence of bears would thus enrich the trophic complexity of future African megafaunal assemblages. Beyond interactions with large fauna, brown bears perform vital ecosystem engineering roles for smaller creatures. Their foraging pits collect water, providing microhabitats for amphibians and invertebrates. Bears disperse seeds of berry-bearing shrubs, aiding plant regeneration that offers nesting sites and cover for birds. Streams conditioned by bears' occasional trampling and nutrient inputs from bear scats can increase aquatic productivity, bolstering fish populations and invertebrate prey. In this way, brown bears create cascading positive effects throughout North African ecosystems, benefiting a rich tapestry of small mammals, birds, and fish in both terrestrial and aquatic realms. Bringing brown bears back to North Africa would not only restore a lost predator-scavenger dynamic, but also reignite the intricate web of interactions that sustained these ecosystems for millennia. From ungulates and primates to future mega herbivores and the smallest stream dwellers, bears stand to be true keystone species in the rewilded landscapes of the Maghreb. The rewilding of brown bears into North Africa would introduce a new dynamic into a landscape already shaped by a unique guild of native and rewilded predators. Unlike most African carnivores, which are specialized hunters, the brown bear is an opportunistic omnivore, combining foraging, scavenging, and occasional predation. Its interactions with other large predators would likely be a blend of competition, kleptoparasitism, food theft, avoidance, and indirect ecological balancing, reflecting complex relationships observed in other ecosystems worldwide. The African wolf is a medium-sized canid, an opportunistic scavenger and small game hunter. In regions where brown bears and wolves overlap, such as Eurasia, wolves often avoid direct conflict with bears but follow them to scavenge leftovers from bear kills or foraging sites. In North Africa, African wolves might adopt similar behavior, keeping a cautious distance from brown bears while opportunistically exploiting carcasses, fruit trees disturbed by bears, or bear-dug foraging pits. On rare occasions, bears may displace wolves from kills or dens, but the two species would likely coexist through spatial avoidance and scavenging dynamics rather than direct competition. The striped hyena, North Africa's resident scavenger, would find itself in a delicate relationship with brown bears. Both species share an overlapping scavenging niche, targeting carrion and occasionally small prey. While bears are larger and more dominant, striped hyenas are known for their persistence and nocturnal habits, which may reduce direct encounters. Hyenas might shadow bears to scavenge scraps left behind or visit carcass sites after bears have departed. However, bears may displace or even kill hyenas at contested feeding sites, asserting dominance as seen with other large carnivores in Eurasia. Despite this, both species could fill complementary scavenger roles, helping to accelerate carrion breakdown and nutrient cycling. Caracals, solitary mid-sized predators, would likely have minimal direct interaction with brown bears. Their elusive nature, nocturnal and crepuscular hunting habits, and preference for small prey like rodents, birds, and small ungulates place them outside the bear's interest range. The only notable impact might come from indirect avoidance. Caracals may shift hunting territories to avoid areas heavily frequented by bears. Conversely, bears might occasionally raid caracal kills or disturb their dens, though such encounters would be rare. The presence of bears could actually benefit caracals indirectly by keeping larger predators, like hyenas or leopards, more cautious and reducing competition in certain zones. If remnant or rewilded Barbary leopards return to North Africa, their interactions with brown bears would likely mirror patterns seen between leopards and bears in the Caucasus and Central Asia. Leopards may avoid direct conflict with bears due to size disadvantage, but would face competition over carcasses, particularly large ungulate kills. Bears are known to steal kills from leopards, forcing leopards to drag their prey into trees when possible, a strategy that may be limited in North Africa's forests. This dynamic could shift leopard behavior toward more nocturnal hunting patterns or increase their mobility to avoid kleptoparasitism. In the long run, this competitive pressure may help maintain leopard populations at balanced densities, preventing overpredation on vulnerable prey species. In a scenario where Barbary lions are successfully rewilded, interactions with brown bears could bring about one of the most formidable carnivore rivalries seen in any ecosystem. Both apex predators would compete over large prey and carcasses, with bears acting more as opportunistic scavengers and occasional predators, while lions remain specialized hunters. As seen in regions where lions and brown bears overlap historically, such as Pleistocene Eurasia, bears could challenge lions at kills, especially if lion prides are small or fragmented. However, lions operating in groups would likely dominate direct encounters. This dynamic could create a balance, bears scavenging lion kills, lions avoiding lone bears, and both species exerting pressure on large herbivore populations in a controlled ecological balance. Their coexistence could add a new level of complexity to predator-prey interactions in North African rewilding landscapes. If cheetahs are rewilded to North Africa, their interactions with brown bears would likely be minimal but impactful. Cheetahs, built for speed and specialized in hunting small to medium antelopes, would avoid bears at all costs. However, brown bears may opportunistically scavenge cheetah kills, a behavior documented with other large carnivores. Given cheetahs' low tolerance for competition and high sensitivity to kleptoparasitism, bear presence could push cheetahs toward more remote or open hunting areas. This could aid cheetah survival by reducing overlap with lions, hyenas, and leopards, but also stress them if resource competition becomes intense. Cheetahs' survival in a bear-populated ecosystem would depend heavily on landscape management and ensuring sufficient prey availability. The possible rewilding of spotted hyenas in North Africa would set the stage for direct competition with brown bears. Spotted hyenas are highly social, aggressive scavengers, and skilled hunters capable of forming formidable clans. In overlapping territories, bears and spotted hyenas may engage in tense interactions, competing for kills and carcasses. Bears' size advantage would make them dominant at solitary encounters, but hyena clans could potentially mob and drive off a lone bear. This rivalry could mirror bear-wolf-hyena dynamics seen in ancient Eurasian ecosystems, where no single species fully dominates, but instead creates a dynamic balance through competition, avoidance, and niche partitioning. The presence of both bears and hyenas could enhance ecosystem resilience by controlling carcass decomposition, limiting disease spread, and balancing predator pressure on herbivore populations. African wild dogs are pack hunters with high energy demands and low tolerance for competition. If rewilded, they would likely avoid direct interaction with brown bears entirely. However, bears could influence wild dog behavior by displacing them from prime hunting areas or scavenging wild dog kills. As with cheetahs, this could push wild dogs to adopt tighter pack coordination and more rapid feeding strategies. Bears might also indirectly benefit wild dogs by suppressing larger scavengers like hyenas, reducing competition pressure on wild dog packs in shared habitats. Rewilding brown bears into a predator-rich North Africa would not result in unchecked dominance, but rather a complex network of predator interactions, blending competition, opportunism, and indirect coexistence. Bears would challenge dominant scavengers like striped and spotted hyenas, occasionally compete with apex hunters like African wild dogs, lions, and leopards, and coexist uneasily with smaller carnivores like African wolves and caracals. Far from disrupting the ecosystem, this tangled web of predator interactions could restore a natural equilibrium lost since the extinction of the Atlas bear and Barbary lion. The revival of such predator dynamics would create a richer, more resilient ecosystem, one where no species stands alone as the ruler, but each plays its intricate role in shaping the balance of life in North Africa's wild landscapes. For thousands of years, the brown bear roamed the forests and mountains of North Africa, a guardian of the wild, a silent architect of healthy ecosystems. Its extinction left a void not only in nature, but in the heart of Africa's ancient wilderness. Today, as we face the twin crises of biodiversity loss and climate change, rewilding offers hope, a chance to heal what was broken. Reintroducing the brown bear to its ancestral lands in North Africa is more than a conservation project. It's a vision of restoration, balance, and coexistence. By bringing back the bear, we could revive lost forests, reshape predator-prey relationships, and restore a natural harmony that once defined these wild landscapes. But this future can only happen if we work together. Scientists, communities, governments, and nature lovers like you. Africa's story with the brown bear isn't over. It's waiting to be written again. Join the conversation, support rewilding, and be part of bringing the wild heart of Africa back to life. And don't miss our next video. We'll explore the bold idea of rewilding elephants in North Africa and how these giants could transform entire ecosystems.